Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
It is for KI Pride Shabbat, this Shabbat. So tonight at the Ketan is Pride Shabbat. We hope that you will join us. And so it's in that spirit that I offer the teachings this morning, that this is our Pride study, and can't believe it, but found like a lot of commentary on this Torah portion from a queer perspective, which is so fun. Now, remember, I'm sad that two of my books, Torah Queries and Queering the Torah, both burned. So I would have looked up this parsha in those two books. So I don't have that for you because they burned, but I did find other stuff, which is so hilarious. Anyway. All right, so we are going to jump in to our text. Shelach Lecha is the portion. So we're in the book of Numbers. I'm going to share, God willing. Okay, so we dealt last week with the people wanting to go back to Israel back to Egypt because they had this twisted vision of what it had been, and we talked a lot about commentary around that, what happens when we have nostalgia that's not really necessarily accurate, and we know it's not. We're not judging them. It's not accurate. Like, oh, we had it so great in Egypt. Well, no, you didn't. And yes, there were things I'm sure that they valued, about familiarity and the life they had. I'm not suggesting they didn't, but I'm saying we know that it is a mischaracterization of their past. So we talked about that last week. So now we're getting another episode where the people are gonna complain. And so let's look at the episode and the aftermath. This is when people say, remember that commentary last week where she said that she's always a little disheartened because the book of Numbers starts out so great and like everything is so awesome, and then she knows what's coming, right? And so it's like, even reading last week, it's like, I knew this week was coming. Like, we knew this week was coming. So it's hard to read this week because it's like, we know it's coming. And like, so anyway. All right, so what happens this week? Vaydaber Adonai Moshe Lemor, something new and different. God speaks to Moshe, saying, and this is the name of our parsha, Shelach Lecha Anashim, send to you, or for you, Anashim, people, Vayachuru et Eretz Canaan, and they will scout out the land of Canaan, Asher Ani Noten Livnei Israel, that I am giving to the people Israel. One person for each mateh, for each tribe, and they should be Nasi. Remember when we studied Parshat Naso, and we had the Shoresh Nun Sin Aleph, a Nasi is someone who has been lifted up. So someone of stature. So a leader, a prince. Sometimes it's translated prince, officer, like whatever. So somebody high up in each tribe. So you're not sending schleppers. You're sending people that people will trust what they say when they come back, because these are their leaders. So Moshe, Yishlach Otam, Bamidbar Paran, he sent them from the desert of the wilderness of Paran by the order of Yud He Vav He. Kulam Anashim Roshei V'nei Israel Hema. So they were all people who were heads of the people Israel. Yes, they were. Okay? So we're getting told again that Moshe does exactly what God asks and sends important people, leaders in the community. And so each by tribe, we get their names. And of course, Hoshea bin Nun is one of them. Joshua bin Nun, right? He's from Ephraim. And so we get all the names. And of course, it's not family names. It's Ben Susi, Ben Gemali, right? The son of so-and-so is how we are known in our tribal designations. These were the names of the people who Moshe sent to do reconnaissance, right, in the land. And Moshe changes Joshua's name here. So name changes are often in the Torah. They are always significant. We've really lost the story behind Yoshua's name change. We don't really have, that tradition's been lost to us. What we have is a remnant that it happens. We're not told why, we're not told whatever, but it moves it from Hosea, right? That's what his name was, Hosea, to Yehoshua. So by adding this Yud, it becomes a Yud He derivative, Yud He Vav derivative, so it becomes a Yahwist name. So maybe there's some conversion story here. Maybe this is Moshe taking him on officially as his acolyte, and converts him to a Yahwist name as part of that. We don't know. We've lost that truth. So Vaishlach otam Moshe LaTorah to Eretz Canaan. It's very repetitive. It's very this literary style of repeating over and over and over. So Moshe sent them out to scout the land of Canaan, and we get told what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to look at the land, see what it's like, and the population that's settled there, whether they're strong or weak, and whether they are few or many. So this is reconnaissance. This is military reconnaissance. Uma haaretz asher hu yoshev ba. And what's the land like where they're settled? Whether it's tova, right, or imra'ah, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And what about the cities? And what about the machanaim? Are they camps? Are they fortified places? With walled? What's going on over there? And what is the land like? Whether it's shmena, fat, or razah, thin, whether there are trees or not, and make sure that you don't do an easy mission, dig in, right? This says exert yourselves, but it's I can't even say the word. V'hit chazaktem, so you should make yourselves strong and take from the fruit of the land, meaning don't just go look at it and come back. Work to bring back a real report, a real sample of what's going on. Because now is the grape harvest, so go see, bring us some of those. So that's what they did. We get the way that they went. Then the rabbis want to analyze the way that they went. Maybe Yeshua and Caleb went a different route, and that's why they experienced something different than the other 10. But anyway, so they spent a lot of time on this direction. They went from the wilderness of Tzin as far as Rehov, coming towards Hamat. What would they have seen had they gone that way? They went up through the Negev, came to Hebron, and they saw the descendants of the Anakites. And we get this editor's note that Hebron had been built 7 years before Tzon of Egypt. I think keeps opening up, Justin. I don't know they came to the Wadi Eshkol, and they cut down grapes, and they had to carry it on bars because they were so big, presumably, the cluster, and pomegranates and figs. Okay, and so you've seen this Eshkol. You've seen, no. You've seen the wine brand where they're carrying the cluster of grapes. You've seen, I think it's on Kedem wine from Israel, but that is this reference, is that they were so big they had to carry the grapes on poles over their shoulders. And they returned after 40 days. So they're gone 40 days. Remember, this is our time of completion is 40. So that is not surprising that we find that they were gone for 40 days. That's how long you need to be gone or how long you need to be engaged in something to do it right and to do it well. So they go before the entire community. They return to them and let them see the fruit. And they start to tell their report, and they said, we came to the land to which you sent us, and yes, it is flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Ephes, which literally means zero. Ephes, meaning but that ain't nothing. Because Ha'am HaYoshev Ba'aretz, as the nation that lives, the people that live in the land is really strong, and their cities are fortified. And gdolot, huge, me'od, very huge. And also, we saw the descendants of the Anakites there. Amalek Yoshev Ba'aretz. Remember Amalek, that sends, shudders through all the people. Israel are living in the Negev, and the Hittite and the Jebusite and the Amorite are settled in the highlands, right? So they're settled in Jerusalem, what became Jerusalem. The Yevusi. David kicks out the Jebusites and makes that his capital. And the Canaanite is settled by the sea and hard by the Jordan. So they are giving a report that it is terrifying. The people are inconquerable. It's dangerous, no matter how lovely the land might be and how fruitful it is, which of course is how you survive in an agrarian culture. And even if you just need to feed your sheep and goats, you need the land to produce. So Caleb knows what this means. Caleb knows, and we're not getting the visual, but you can imagine the non-verbals from the people. They're starting to murmur amongst themselves. They're starting to freak out. They're starting to tear their clothes, right? So we're not getting that visual, but imagine if you're filming the scene as the director, what do you have the crowd do? Kalev knows that this is bad, that this is really bad. So he hushes the people, which means they must be making some kind of noise, right? They're mumbling, they're wailing, they're whatever. And Kalev hushes them and says, let's go up. Yes, we can take it and we can prevail. Nuchal, we are able. Remember when Yaakov is wrestling with the angel? Lo nuchal. He wasn't able. That meant they were matched. So one wasn't able to beat the other. So that same language is used here. Ki yachol, nuchala, we can, we're able. But the men who went up with him said, so that the other spies said, we are not able to go up against that population, for it is stronger than we are. So they gave what Torah calls a not true report. So kind of like slander. They dibat haaretz, like they it's almost like it sounds in English. They debased the land that they had scouted out to the people of Israel, saying the land that we crossed through to scout it out, it is a land, ochelet yoshveha. It is a land that eats its inhabitants, that consumes its inhabitants. I did a whole lesson with y'all once about that phrase from Meir Schweiger. Rabbi Meir Schweiger does this whole piece on what does it mean, Eretz ochelet yoshveha. V'chol ha'am asher ra'inu b'tocha anshe midot, and everyone we saw in it were people of great midah, measurement. So they were big. For there we saw the giants, the children of Anak, min ha-Nephilim, that came from the Nephilim. We were in our eyes like grasshoppers, and thus we were in their eyes. So be'einenu, in our eyes, kachagavim, as grasshoppers, and also v'chein hayinu be'eineihem, and also were we in their eyes. So we're going to go just a little bit into 14. The entire community lifted up and let out their voice, and the people wept all that night, right? And now they're turning on Moshe and Aaron. And what do they say? Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or in this wilderness, would that we had died. Now why is Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh bringing us to this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they said each one to his brother, let us head back and return to Egypt. Moshe and Aaron fling themselves on their faces, right? So they go to their knees, put their foreheads to the ground because they know this is really, really, really bad. First of all, the people have turned on them, so they're afraid. Second, and have every right to be. And second of all, they know something terrible is going to happen once God decides to respond. So Kalev and Yoshua tear their garments because they too know that something really bad is going to happen. And they say if God wants to give it to us, it will come to us, this land flowing with milk and honey. Don't rebel against Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, right? And don't be afraid. And the entire community of Israel intended to pelt them with stones. So they are about to stone. We don't know who exactly, but it seems at least Moshe and Aaron, if not Moshe, Aaron, Kalev, and Yoshua. So they're about to stone them. That means to death. When all of a sudden, Kvod Adonai nir'ah ba'ohel moed, the presence of God, the glory of God appeared at the Ohel Moed to all the people Israel, and then God goes, into parent mode and starts chastising them, and Moshe prays on their behalf, and this is where we get Adonai, Erech Hapayim Barav Chesed, Nosei Avon Bafesha, right? This is the 13 attributes of God. We get it twice in Torah, some version of it. Moshe's like, you told me this is who you are when you revealed yourself to me on the mountain. So how about that? How about be that? And don't come after this people. And God says, Salachti Kidvarecha, which our choir sings beautifully at the high holidays. Salachti Kidvarecha. So the choir sings that God answers, I have forgiven them according to your request. But what happens is they are now decreed that they will not see the land since they slandered it. They won't see it. And that means they're going to die in the desert. Okay. So this is where the decree happens that they're not going to go into the land. But we're going to focus on, unless there's something somebody wants to say. Anything anybody wants to say? Many of us know the story. This is not shocking to us. We know the behavior of these people. That's not shocking to us. Anything jump out at anybody this year? Okay. Yeah, Tamara.
Well, when you said you wanted to gear this towards pride, of course, it gives me the understanding that when you see people and you think you're less than, and you think that they think you're less than, it totally relates to the LGBT.
And what happens when we see ourselves as less than and then assume that others see us as less than also? What happens?
We just start acting as less than, and it's just accepted, and that just becomes what it is.
Beautiful. So absolutely, this is where many of the commentators go from an LGBTQIA, queer perspective, is that the Torah is coming to teach. It's one thing for you to be grasshoppers, like they look so big, you feel really small. That doesn't seem to be the problem, right? Like that they felt small and afraid doesn't seem to be the problem. Most commentators go to, and so we were in their eyes. And that's where most commentators say that's the problem. That's why this generation is condemned to die in the desert. It's not so much a punishment as it is God finally gets it, that they are not going to be able to see themselves as free people building a society of justice and equity and compassion. They can't see themselves that way. And if you see yourself that way and you think they see you that way, then you act that way. And then you've sabotaged the whole project because you act that way. You act small. And God gets it that they're not going to be able to act as anything other than grasshoppers. So that it's not actually a punishment. It's actually, okay, this is what has to happen. And the two who could, Caleb and Yoshua, they're going to go in because they're able to see themselves as something other than grasshoppers, right? So beautiful. Tamara? Yes, Lisa.
It just sort of raises the general question of how do you assume that people who see themselves as less than or small can raise a next generation that sees itself in any different sort of way? Because from where would that come from? This generational problem.
So this is, there's a Marge Piercy poem called Magid about telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of going out of Egypt. And she has this couple of lines in her poem about raising children who stood on their shoulders and looked down on them for having been slaves.
Yeah, I know that poem. It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful poem. It's a very important poem.
Yes.
And in that she says, she's talking about the generation that was raised in America who stood on the shoulders of their parents and looked down on them for speaking Yiddish and speaking English with a thick Yiddish accent, right? That's the parallel she's making. So what's interesting is it's both, how would you raise up a proud generation if you see yourself as nothing? And our ancestors did it, like they did it somehow. Like the people who came here who were told they were, vermin, who were speaking with a very thick accent and had nothing. Especially the 1860 wave, the 1880 wave from Eastern Europe. They were told they were much less than, and even raised kids who thought they were less than and embarrassed by them. My father wasn't taught Yiddish. My grandparents spoke Yiddish at home, but they didn't teach my father Yiddish because they didn't want that he should speak that language.
Right.
So it's just a very interesting generational.
Yeah, but you also have in this story God stepping forward and being, this is sort of lovely fantasy that, when we're at our worst, all of a sudden this God comes and says, makes pronouncements that you are worthy. Where does that fit into really solving the problem? Because
actually that's not what God says. God says, how long will you spurn me?
Mm-hmm.
After all I've done for you, I told you could take that land. Do you think there's anything I can't do? What?
Yeah, but they're depending on God to do that for them.
Yes. And God said, I will. And they say, we can't do it. And all the people start freaking out, right? So God is angry that I said, I'm going to take you in and you're wailing. You're going to cry. I'm going to give you something to cry about, right?
Yeah.
Last week, you want meat? I'm going to give you meat. I'm going to give you meat until it's coming out of your nose. You want something to cry about? You think they're going to carry out? You wish you'd have died in this desert? Well, guess what? That's exactly what's going to happen. And your wives, they're going to die here too. that you were so afraid were going to get carried off.
How does that help the process of healing and moving forward?
It doesn't. So, I mean, it doesn't at all. God is done. God is done with this generation and understands that they're not going to be able to go in, that they're not going to be able to do it. And so, and was ready to wipe them out. Is ready to say, I'll pick another people. I'm done. And that's when Moshe intercedes and says, no. Didn't you just say at that other place when I was hidden in the rock with your hand, didn't you just say you were Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet? Like, then wait a minute. You can't wipe them out if you're a God who's slow to anger and, full of Rahmanis and, and truth and goodness. And so God relents and says, Salachti ki barecha. Okay.
And not for the first time.
And not for the first time. Like, so I'm going to let them live, but they're not going to make it into the promised land. I'll let them live. I'm not going to wipe them out because you've asked me not to. So why does this always happen at Torah study that I start coughing? Doesn't it highlight our ability to choose our identity, asks. That seems to be a theme in the Parsha, is how do we understand ourselves? What is our identity and who defines us, right? So the first time we are called Bnei Yisrael, who calls us Bnei Yisrael? Who's the first one to call us Bnei Yisrael in Torah? Rachel?
It's not Pharaoh, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Gold star. Pharaoh is the first one to call us Bnei Yisrael. So an anti-Semite is the first one to define us as the people, descendants of Israel. Okay. So how do we identify? Who forms our identity? What identity do we live in? Who do we let tell us who we are? That is very much a queer set of questions. I mean, it's everybody's, but I'm saying specifically as queer people, that has been a huge thing. I don't know if I told you all, I'm sure I have, but just bear with me, is that I was young in my late 20s, and some women were talking about the patriarchy and women who wear high heels and makeup dress for the patriarchy. And so, and makeup and all of that is for the patriarchy, and letting heterosexual men define what beauty is and blah, 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 blah. And there I'm sitting there like looking like Susie Cream Cheese. And so, with on makeup and earrings and, whatever, girly girl clothes. And I said to them, so wait a minute, you're telling me that because I wear makeup and I wear clothes like this, I'm oppressed, because they were saying it's oppressive and, we need to liberate ourselves. And I said, so I'm oppressed because I am wearing what the patriarchy says makes me beautiful. And they said, yes. I said, okay. So am I correct in assuming that if I wear what you tell me I should wear, then I'm liberated? And they were like, it's like, could they say yes? They knew they shouldn't say yes, but I was like, really? So you can define what a lesbian should look like, right? But I can't. You tell me what I have to look like, and then I'm liberated. Okay, understood, got it. Which is where we are right now, right on the left. This is exactly where we are. Cancel culture is all about, I define what a moral stance is, and if you don't have the right sentence when someone asks you where do you stand on X, you are canceled. You are out. I define, put in whatever I you want, the far left, the this group, the that identity politic group, the this group, the that group, and if you don't toe the party line, you are out. Okay, let's look at some folks have to say. We have to start with our teacher of blessed memory, our master teacher, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. So I'm giving you all the links from now on, in case you want to look at the whole piece, because I realized I just pick snippets for you that I want to bring out of all these articles. And I realized, Amy, they didn't read the whole article. Maybe, you're picking for them. Okay, so this is to empower you to go read more on any of these that float your boat. All right. The spies, say Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and he's basing himself on the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe teaches that the spies were not afraid of failure. The spies were afraid of success. Their mistake was the mistake of, I love this, that this is the teaching of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, right? He says this mistake is the mistake of very holy men, meaning very holy people have a flaw in their way of seeing things. And the spies were very holy people who fell into that. And it's like, huh? What? Let's see. They wanted to spend their lives in the closest possible proximity to God. What they did not understand was that God seeks, in the Hasidic phrase, a dwelling in the lower world. One of the great differences between Judaism and other religions is that while others seek to lift people to heaven, Judaism seeks to bring heaven down to earth. So the spies were holy people who wanted to stay in the desert hanging out with God and being fed, nursed, if you will, directly by God, right? God is giving them manna. God is nursing them. And they don't want to lose that intimacy. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe is saying, so they misunderstood the whole point of Torah. Much of Torah, says Rabbi Sachs, is about things not conventionally seen as religious at all. Labor relations, agriculture, welfare provisions, loans and debts, land ownership, and so on. It is not difficult to have an intense religious experience in the desert, or in a monastic retreat, or in an ashram. Most religions have holy places and holy people who live far removed from the stresses and strains of everyday life. But that is not the Jewish project, the Jewish mission. God wanted the Israelites to create a model society where human beings were not treated as slaves, where rulers, pay attention people, where rulers were not worshipped as demigods or dear leaders or fill in the blank, where human dignity was respected, where law was impartially administered to rich and poor alike, where no one was destitute, no one was abandoned to isolation, no one was above the law, and no realm of life was a morality-free zone. That requires a society, and a society needs a land. It requires an economy, an army, fields and flocks, labor and enterprise. All these in Judaism become ways of bringing the Shekhinah, the divine presence, into the shared spaces of our collective life. It is challenging to leave the desert and go out into the world. Yes. With all its trials and temptation. Yes. But that is where God wants us to be, bringing God's spirit to the way we run an economy, a welfare system, a judiciary, a health service, and an army, healing some of the wounds of the world and bringing to places often shrouded in darkness fragments of divine light. Preach, Lord Sachs, Rabbi Lord Sachs, preach. You just could not say it more clearly about what Torah thinks about the times that we're living in. It could not be more clear. And this is when people say, leave your religion at the door of the voting booth. I say, bullshit. Pardon my French. I bring my religion, dafka, into the voting booth because this is what my Torah says about who we should be electing. People who will take care of the sick and the poor and the vulnerable, and not even just that, but will equitably distribute all of the resources, healthcare, intellectual opportunities, education, all of it. And that is how you earn staying in the land that you took. You didn't earn it. But if you want to keep it, this is what Torah has to say about what you're supposed to be doing in your business, in your judiciary, in everything. And I'm just like, ugh. It's just so spot on for me about the things that are making some of us absolutely crazy about what we're seeing in our government right now. And in the world, distribution of wealth. Okay, sorry. That was a little bit of a soapbox. All right. So looking at queering the text a little bit, I love this piece from Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love, based on this teaching of Rabbi Sachs, based on the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us. It's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Boom. If you see yourself as a grasshopper and assume that everybody else sees you as a grasshopper, you do not serve the world. That does not serve, because you're going to behave in grasshopper ways. The world does not need grasshoppers. The world needs people who are ready to shine, who are brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous, daring, creative, right? That's what moves the world forward. She calls it, right, making manifest the glory of God that is within us. And that's what Schneerson calls God dwelling in the lower worlds, that's what God wants. That's why God creates this world, is so that we can bring God, the Shekhinah, into this world. So different language, same exact wonderful, amazing message, I think, in my humble opinion. Right. Rabbi Erwin Keller writes, in the earliest years of the fight for our rights in this country, he's writing from a queer perspective, our approach was tentative. This was revealed in our political rhetoric, repeatedly explaining that we were, quote, born this way. It was always a rhetoric of apology. We are grasshoppers, we seem to say. We were born as grasshoppers. It's not our fault that we're grasshoppers. So please don't step on us as you would step on, say, grasshoppers. Yes, we might have been born that way, but we didn't stop there. We might have begun with our particular genes and hormones and whatever else goes into the human cocktail, but we've all kept adding and shaking and stirring. And what we've each concocted with our raw ingredients is nothing short of brilliant and brave and, to my mind, holy. All of us who were, quote, born this way have made choices from the moment we realized we were different in some way that matters, when to pass, when not to, how to survive, how to leave home, how to create home, how to find community, how to make community where there was none, how to love, how to be brave, how to be fabulous, how to be in this world. Frankly, in a certain way, how any of us here was born is perhaps the least interesting thing about us. We all continue to become. I love this. He's playing on the name of God. That is, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, right? Like, I will become what I will become. We all continue to become through our choices, our intentions, our actions. We continue to become by choosing integrity, honesty, insight, compassion, freedom, love, hot, deviant, sex, courage, creativity, anger, and persistence in the face of injustice. We might have been born grasshoppers, or we might think we were, but we have become giants. We have wandered for decades in a wilderness of sodomy laws and marriage inequality and will and grace reruns and the God hates fagmongers of Westboro Baptist. We have had blessings and we have had reversals. We have had our Harry Hayes and our Harvey Milks and our Phyllis and Dells. We've had our radical fairies and sisters of perpetual indulgence and queer nations and act-ups. And yes, our Lady Gagas. We have lost Matthew Shepherds at the hands of Amalek. We have lost hundreds of thousands of our dearest ones to plague. We continue to witness intersex children surgically corrected in the name of gender normativity, and our transgender youth suffer the mistreatment of psychoanalysis. We continue to experience both hope and hardship, but we are making a promised land of this wilderness. We have become giants, and we will have this land flow with milk and honey. Preach, my friend, Rabbi Erwin Keller, preach. Oof, really nothing to say at all. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Okay. And I even printed this out and hacked out a piece of it so it wouldn't be so long, and I read it. Okay, I got on a roll. All right, so I'm going to pay attention to my printed copy. Now, Jay Stanton writes, maybe the scouts were scrawny in comparison to the Anakites. If not in reality, it's certainly how they imagined themselves. If they were smaller, and even if they simply imagined themselves to be smaller, they had reason to fear. However, the next step in their logic is problematic. The scouts go on to say that they must have looked like grasshoppers to the Anakites. This step in their logic seems based solely on projection, the kind of imagination that produces monsters under the bed. Presumptuous and counterproductive, assuming the thoughts of another is rarely fruitful. Instead, it tends to reduce the imaginer to a childlike state. Lawrence Kushner, in the book 5 Cities of Refuge, recounts a teaching of the Kutzker Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Morgenstern of Kutsk, says that it's all right to say you feel like a grasshopper in your own eyes. That means you're alert. But when you start guessing what you look like to someone else, you've given them permission to define you. So you're still a child. For this reason, Kalev, who refuses to let anyone else define him, is a man. And, along with Joshua, was one of the only 2 men of the wilderness generation to live to enter the promised land, right? Because they were not children, they were men, they entered the promised land. All the other men did not, because they were actually, in this commentary, children. And children can't build a land and a society. It was not based on age, right? It was based on who they allow to define them. The 10 scouts are nervous, letting others define them. They've not yet trusted their own definitions of themselves. Kalev, in contrast, is strong and independent, letting no one else define him. Repeatedly asserting his stance on the subject at hand, he refuses to pass as someone he's not. If as a people, okay, I can't even say all those letters. It's gotten so ridiculous. I just, element of PQRST. If as a people, Jews, were to take Caleb's actions to heart, we would follow his example of strength and independence. Stepping up to the challenges of our times as queer Jews allows us to grow as a people, especially if we employ hopeful imaginings or strength and pride rather than frightening projections of powerlessness. And then, like Kalev, no matter the gender with which we identify, we will be mentioned. Mention means men, but in Yiddish it means human being, meaning not an animal. So it's not used to designate a gender, it's used to say be a mensch, which means be a human, don't act like an animal. And so whatever gender we identify with, we will all be mentioned. We will all, which is plural for mensch, meaning can we step up? Right? That because there's a way that we do it to ourselves. And this is very true. It was true, not as true anymore, but it has been very true in queer history that we did it to ourselves. You know, like we disempowered ourselves. And so for a while, this would have been a teaching that like I would have pulled out. And you know, they say that the more oppressed a people is, the worse they treat their leaders. So we can see how oppressed Bnei Israel feel here, and they immediately turn to stone Moshe and Aaron. Well, so was and many queer people made the argument that's what it was, leadership in the queer community. The more oppressed we felt, the worse we treated our queer leaders. And it's true. We turned on our leaders. We turned on, you know, people who were willing to stick their necks out. We turned on people out of our own sense of disempowerment and projecting onto others how they saw us. So for me, as a queer person, this teaching's about, okay, so you may feel fear and you may feel like you're smaller in their eyes, but you don't get to live into that. If you want the Jewish people to benefit, you have to step into the challenge of that and step up the way God was asking these folks to get over how they saw themselves and how they assumed other people saw them. And that's when, you know, we become a blessing to the Jews. All right. Rabbi Jesse Olitsky writes, it is not enough to just condone our community members. Hence, and this is to the question of why do Pride Shabbat? We're open and affirming. Our senior rabbi's lesbian and has been out since she was 16. Why do we have to do Pride? Because it's not enough to just condone our community members. It is not enough to just accept our community members. We celebrate. We have our pride flags high. We wave our pride flags high to celebrate. We recite pride blessings to celebrate. We participate in the Pride Festival to celebrate. We celebrate as a way of doing tshuva. We celebrate so that no one here should ever feel as if they are grasshoppers. We celebrate so we all always feel like giants. We celebrate so that every home we enter, whenever we stand on the precipice of our promise, whenever we stand on the precipice of our promised lands, we don't have to fear entering that new land for fear or fear coming out of the closet. Rather, we celebrate each and every person, and in doing so, we celebrate our faith in God because we celebrate our faith in ourselves being created in God's. So, if anyone asks you, why do we have to do Pride Shabbat? Like, we're clearly open and welcoming and affirming. Why do we have to do this? It's because it's not enough to be welcoming and affirming. That's not enough. We have to celebrate that we are a place that is not just welcoming of, but comprised of queer Jews, atheist Jews, non-Jews, Jew-adjacent people, allies, right? We celebrate that, and we don't do it enough, I think. Like, so I don't want to have an interfaith family Shabbat because I feel like that just calls people out, and otherizes them in a way that we don't need to do. But there's a part of me that wishes we would shout a little louder, like sometimes, that we don't just welcome those people. These are our people. This is part of the people Israel, our people who live with and love Jews, crazy people who choose Jews and being a part of Jewish community. Like, that special breed of insanity needs to be celebrated, not just tolerated or welcomed or whatever. It needs to be celebrated as a way to do tshuva. I love that he phrases it that way. As a celebration is how we do tshuva as a people for having not welcomed those people, for not having had those people, whoever they are, fill in the blank, people, women, whoever, we haven't fully welcomed into full adult Jewish participation because they choose to be with us. You don't have to say you're Jewish. That doesn't mean you're not part of our community. You may not be officially Jewish. That does not mean you're not ours. And we need to celebrate that. And that means going beyond, yeah, sure, everybody knows it's okay. It's like, no. We take pride in the fact that we are a community of, now fill in the blank, folks who weren't always welcome and weren't always acknowledged as full members of our. And so I like that reframe of why do we have to do it? Why do we have to go so far as putting up a flag when we're clearly open? It's because we need to go beyond letting it be known that we condone it. We need to celebrate all of us, who we are. That's why we have so many Jewish women's programming, people like Lisa Simon, who work so hard on that. Both Lisas who work hard on that. We need ways to not just be, oh yeah, women are fully inclusive, we're egalitarian. That's not enough. There needs to be Rosh Chodesh, right? There needs to be a women's Jewish celebration so that we celebrate women's Jewish identity. We want a men's group so that we can celebrate that men have their own unique culture and their own, ways of doing things if they choose that. We need all kinds of ways to celebrate, not just condone, so that we can do tshuva for all of the generations that weren't able to do that for so many levels. So yeah, Lee is saying there's more energy in this, celebration than, just being okay with something. It's so true. And always when you're doing anything around LGBTQIA stuff, right, Margot, we want it to be about love. And it is always the best smelling demonstration you will ever find yourself a part of. They are the best smelling men in the world. Rachel.
Thank you. I feel like every single one of the selections today was written for a teenager who's queer. Just happens that I'm a mom. I'm not going to say any more than that. Clearing my throat. And who seems to, see herself in the, one way, and then projects that onto the entire world around her. And it just, and you think, well, that's what teenagers do, except now I am suddenly aware of this whole other layer of it. Which is that it's also about that there's this other part of her identity that she, where she must feel at times, judged and made to feel small and all of the rest. Even though, for all intents and purposes, she goes to a school where that's supposedly, they're welcomed and, and so on and so forth. But you can say that, but if you're not actively celebrating it, right? As you say, so everything is turned around as, because of the way she views herself, it's this person thinks I'm, that person thinks I'm, I know they're looking at me as, I don't know. Did you have like a window into my life and you just like picked all of these and just
going to say, I didn't write any of it. And, so, right. That's what's for me. And I'm not being trite. That's what Torah study is about. That's why we study Torah, right? Is because
this was my whole last week.
That helps us go, oh, right. These are eternal challenges we have as human beings and as society. It does not go away because we got the land of Israel and then we got it back 2,000 years later, right? Like that's not what it's about. It's not about that. It's about exactly what you just said, about helping us.
But not wanting to have the God reaction.
Right.
So could we not do that?
Right. And so, yes, so this is Torah study. Like for me, it never stops to be miraculous for me that I go in going, the grasshopper thing again. And then, I start going down rabbit holes and I'm like, oh, of course. Yes, it's perfect for pride. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is exactly what pride is about. And when people say to me something about anti-Semitism, like how to fight anti-Semitism until October 7th and the aftermath, I will be clear about that. My answer was always, why are we focused on anti-Semitism? We need to be focused on Jewish pride. If we raise proud Jewish children who are proud of their Jewish identity and proud of their Jewish values and proud of where we stand and blah, 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 that's how you fight anti-Semitism. And so, sort of what you're saying about your daughter. It's like, if she were coming if she identifies as if she comes out of a place of pride, that's how you deal with homophobia. That's how you deal with, all of those things that she's afraid people are thinking about her in a way that makes it less than. And I think that's exactly what all these commentaries are saying. It's the problematic part is not that we think we're grasshoppers. It's that we assume that's how everyone experiences us. And then we live small. Margot?
Yes, a quickie. So Rachel, you definitely touched on stuff that I am interested in, personally, just in my spiritual and physical life is I spend a lot of time thinking about my own identity and how I relate to others and, up against what walls of perception that other people have of me. It's just the way that my, interest works, right? So it is challenging because no matter what you do or who you are or what parts of yourself you claim, others just A, may not see that about you. B, that can fluctuate over time as well. One part of you can be very important to you and then no longer be the most, the highest priority or whatever, and it changes forever. But I feel like the things that have been really special have just been in touch and closeness with the parts of my identity that are trying to shine through, because that is what connects me with creation, God, my true authentic self, my nature, my spirit, whatever that is. And culturally, that is so many different things. It's so layered and complex. And we can't know everything about ourselves in life. We can't know everything about the way other people perceive us, and that's okay too. But I think this is a really about pride. And I think that's what, for me, finding love and acceptance and enjoyment adjacent to in and out of the queer community, just as a person who culturally is around it through many personal experiences in my life. Love is love. This is a group that is centered around, orchestrating, creating, and celebrating love. So we can, I just feel out loud that when you get to that place of love and when you get to parts of you that expand love, it's just this is it. This is what life is supposed to be about. This is what being a person is. And it's really special and beautiful. And that is creation overall. So I felt the readings today really connected me with that, my own formed belief on that. So just sharing love is love.
Amen. Tamara.
Yeah, thanks. I also wanted to speak to the sensitive part of this. We can't really have as a goal to somebody who's coming out that the goal is to be out and celebrated, and to celebrate ourselves. That the goal, I think, along the journey is to just be understood, because the process is not linear. Where a person's closeted and then the goal is everything's great and they can celebrate in pride. It's a process and it goes back and forth. And I think we have to be really sensitive that our goal is to not think that people should be out and should be filled with pride. It's that we just want to understand people along their journey.
I'm going to gently and respectfully disagree. I think we must respect people and understand them where they are, 100,000,000%. I do believe the goal is to have every human being live fully out and celebrated for who they are. That is a goal for me.
Right. So, okay. So let me clarify that, yes, of course, that would be society's goal, and that would be ultimately a goal. But I think I guess we're talking about parents and kids, and I think we just really, like I said, I'm just speaking to the nuance of how that process works, and that it's not a quick process. It's a slow unfolding sometimes, and sometimes we don't want to forget that part of the process. That's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's, that piece where he said, when to pass, when not, there's times I just don't want to get into it. Like, so I know that there are times I pass, somebody says, where's your husband? There's times I don't want to get into it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So yes, like from that minuscule example to people who are not able or ready to come out for so many reasons, including damaging families and children, right? Like, that it's not insignificant when I think about talking to queer women in Jerusalem who are Orthodox, right? So they call themselves Orthodikes, and they leave the house with a change of clothes in their bag, and when they get to where they're going, they change their clothes from observant, clothing to whatever they want to wear at their queer Orthodox gatherings, and the reason they can't come out is because their husband will take their children from them. Often they have 6 children, and the children won't speak to them, and the little ones will be taken from them. So it's so it's true. We have to always remember that it's about people living in their situations, and we can't ever judge what that means and what that looks like.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.